All right, today we're going to be using wet and wet techniques and a number of broken edges to create the painting that you see behind me. Stick around. Okay, today we're going to be working with this cell phone image of some boats out sailing. I guess it's a reasonably fine image, but it really is going to take some work for it to become a better painting. So for starters, we have this in a portrait orientation. And now if I had a big hero boat out here, sails and everything, then yes, this is a great orientation for this particular painting. But we don't have that. We have a bunch of smaller boats that are going to make up the painting. So we want a landscape orientation. So let's just consider this to be our new orientation. And that's problem number 1 solved. Problem number 2 is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are staggered like fence posts, and it's just too routine, too 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of staccato-y, and we don't want that. It doesn't really make for an interesting painting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 boats and we're going to group them closer together and push them back just a little bit, and then we're going to take a handful of these boats, probably 3 of them, and put them here and bring them down just a little bit, and that's going to be our hero of the painting. Our center of interest will be here. So that's that problem solved. Now if you look at the rule of thirds, that's going to generally put our center of interest right in the intersection, which is where we want it to be. So that's problem number 2 solved. Problem number 3 is this mountain range or mountaintop, and that mountaintop leads you out of the painting, and that's not going to help you. It's not going to help your viewers. So what we want to do is we want to bring this in and bring that in, and we're going to push those back in the distance, but we're going to bring those to where they point down to where our center of interest is here. We're also going to put some motion in the sky that leads the viewer down to that one spot. And we'll make tiny little waves that sort of lead us in there as well. So we want things to push us into the painting. These hillside way too dark, so we're going to fade those back some. But anyway, that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, we're going to start by mixing up a big pool of cool sky color, and then we're going to mix a smaller pool of warm color, mostly raw sienna with a little bit of that cobalt in it. We're going to dampen in strokes in the sky with clear water. We're going to come in and add more with the warm color, and then we're going to come back and fill in those gaps with blue, but we're going to make sure intentional brush strokes that's leading the viewer to the center of interest in the painting. Okay, we're going to make sure that we thin our sky out a little bit as we bring it down near the water line, because this is going to be a staged approach to the sky. While the sky's still wet, we're going to mix up a cooler color, add a little lavender to it, and push it back in the background to represent our hillsides. It's going to be a little thicker than the previous sky wash, or it would just run to the bottom. And again, we're just going to let that fade. Now we're going to start mixing up that tree line, and again, all this is being done wet and wet. So we're going to come in while it's wet, and we're going to drop in that tree line, just letting it go. But the whole time we've been avoiding these sails. We don't want to mask around them. We don't want to paint over them. We just rather avoid them. Continuing down to the water line, we're going to get darker as we get there, making sure we just leave this broken, almost haphazard edge. It needs to be level, but it doesn't need to be perfectly flat. We're going to get darker still, and we're going to start building or omitting structures and things on the far shore. These will eventually turn out to be whatever the viewer wants them to be, but they'll represent buildings and rooftops and those types of things. If you're enjoying this video, please make sure you like and subscribe, and that'll give me the motivation to create more. Okay, starting with clear water, we're going to lay in the foreground, just touching the horizon here and there and letting it bleed through. We'll come back in with some of the cool sky color that was left over. and then we'll darken that up and start building the water depth as we come to the foreground. And using a barely damp brush, we're just lifting out some of the color beneath the boats where the reflections will go. This may not help us too much long term, but it's worth a shot to try to preserve those whites. Alright, so now what we want to do is start giving some shape to the boat. So we're just going to put a little color down by the waterline, a little shadow color. We want to keep that moist because it needs to bleed into the water. It just wouldn't look right to have a hard line at the bottom of the boats. Alright, so we got our first pass on the boats done. Now we want to try to give some shape to these sails. So using warms and cool colors and considering where the sun is coming from and where the sails fold, we're just going to start using real soft edges to give them some billowy shape. Alright, using a darker color, we're just going to start adding a little bit of detail to the boats. We don't want it to be a portrait of a boat, we just want it to feel like a boat, so we'll put in a little dark here and there to represent water lines and booms and masts and those kinds of things. Just enough to say boat and no more. Okay, so sometimes things don't go as you planned, and all the preserved whites that we tried to keep earlier just went away. So we're going to take some white gouache straight out of the tube, undiluted, and just add some reflections in the water. Alright, now we'll start working on the far shoreline. We'll take some dark color and just put some dots and dashes to represent things under awnings or under piers or those types of things. Just some texture to that far shore. Alright, now with the far shore good and dry, we're going to come back in with some more straight white gouache. And we're going to start adding in some masts and little sailboats and those kinds of things. But they're just little dots of paint. Don't try to over-render these things. Alright, last little touches. We'll drop a few birds here in the sky and we can call this one finished. That's it. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.